Senator, I'm going to start with you since you're to my left. And the opening question is, in your first year, first of all, I'm going to say give them each a minute and 30 seconds for this question. And we'll start right now, and Chris is our timer. All right, the first question is, in your first year, what is the boldest bill you will propose up front, and how will you build relationships in Congress and a coalition to pass it?
So the very first bill that I want to work on and introduce is one around affordable college. I am ready to fight for us to have debt-free public college, free community college. It builds on the work that I did in the State Senate introducing a free community college bill. And I'm really excited to have the relationships both on the outside and on the inside. I've got 16 members of Congress who have already endorsed me. The Congressional Progressive Caucus has said this is going to be a top agenda item for them. And I think we really need to invest in making sure that we are driving people towards education and not away. It is no way to start a life to start with $40,000 of debt. And so we need to take that on immediately and make sure that we are funding the ability for people to have a life, to get a job, to get a higher education, and to make sure that that ultimately feeds back into our economy. And I'll tell you something, this investment that we're making will come back time and time again. It's not just the right thing to do, which it is the right thing to do, but it is also an economic move. If we have people that go on to get a higher education, don't have all that debt, and actually can get a job after that, it means they won't be reliant on government services later. So I can't wait to provide a pathway to opportunity for our young people, which by the way means for our older parents as well, who are also struggling with the cost of debt. I know, because I got a kid in college.
So it's great to be here with all of you. I'm Brady Walkinshaw, State Representative from the 43rd District. And the first piece of legislation that I would bring forward would be a carbon tax to put a federal price on carbon. Climate change is the most important generational issue that we face. I believe that we are in a point in our time when we cannot wait another day before taking bold and decisive action on climate change. This is an issue that I wake up to, go to bed to, thinking about at night. This is an issue that is what I am so passionate about, to bring leadership that is bold, that is effective, that is long-term, that is invested, and that draws on the amazing, amazing potential and innovation of our home in the Pacific Northwest to price and address climate change by putting a price on carbon. So that is what we need to do. And when we price carbon, I think we can get at the many, many issues that we start to face around social justice, economic justice, what it means to transition off a fossil fuel dependent economy, and what that means for the future of the kids that my husband and I hope to have down the road. I bring into this race the support of dozens and dozens of my colleagues in the state legislature, leaders on climate change, the chair of our House Environment Committee, your state representative, Joe Fitzgibbon, Joe McDermott, several members of Congress, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Equality Caucus, and I would work with those partnerships to deliver a federal price on carbon.
So question number 2, we'll start with Representative Walkinshaw. Where does our congressional district most need federal help, and what are your plans to address that specifically?
Yeah. So the first thing that I did when I came into the state legislature 3 years ago was my husband and I jumped in our little Subaru and we drove across to the east side of the Cascades to meet with colleagues from across the aisle in their home districts. In places like Omak, the Spokane Valley, a lot like the areas I grew up in very conservative rural Whatcom County. The reason I did that is not because I agree with them. I've been working my tail off with others to try to unelect them. But I did that because I think we need to build common ground. And by finding common ground, we will be able to muster and deliver on the needs that we have at home. And these are the ones that I would bring up. First is I would want to serve you as a community on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. I believe that federal policy has done a dismal job with keeping up on the economic justice, the social justice, the sustainability issues that face urban environments in America today. And I would fight to deliver housing policies, to integrate affordable housing as we build out our light rail stations. I led on that in Olympia. I would work side by side with colleagues to continue delivering on the things that I already have. I secured funding to found the Center for Latino Health at the University of Washington. Secured tens of millions of dollars working with tribes to fund the construction of the Burke Museum. So I believe very strongly that we need a federal partner who is invested here at home to address the crises we face on transportation, housing, and homelessness.
To repeat the question, where does our congressional district most need federal help? And what are your plans to address that specifically?
Yeah, I really believe also that the federal government has disinvested in everything that is important to us. Education, transit, transportation, housing, and that is why you see these big gaps in what we're able to provide for people. So I think it is a paramount duty for the next congressperson to be able to deliver on bringing back dollars and bringing back federal dollars that leverage state dollars on all of these areas. And I've done that in a Republican-controlled Senate, have still been able to put millions of dollars into pre-apprenticeship programs, have been able to deliver on higher education to the Rainier Valley for the first time, keep an IB program open. Those are all important things. But there is another place that we need a real partner in Congress, and that is that we are in a time of great peril. Donald Trump is out there putting out a lot of things that are absolutely detrimental to our values as a country. And we need somebody who is tested in the fire and ready to go and stand up for the values that make America great. The idea that everybody has a place in this country. The idea that we have opportunity for people to earn a decent wage and to have health care that actually is not reliant on insurers making big profits. To take on the fossil fuel companies that are blocking access to climate change. And that is really what I believe I can do, is build movements to actually make those things real. And you saw it in Standing Rock. We didn't think that could be stopped, but it was a movement that made that stop.
Okay, folks, I appreciate all of the excitement and support for your candidates. But we don't have a ton of time tonight, so thank you if you could try and keep it down a smidge. I appreciate it. Okay, here's the next question, and this will start with Senator Jayapal. Neither of you were Hillary Clinton supporters from the get-go. What do you see as your major area of disagreement with Clinton, and how would you work with President Clinton on this?
Well, I'm really proud to have been a Bernie Sanders supporter and to have been endorsed by Bernie, but let me tell you, I, as an immigrant woman of color, I do not have the luxury to allow Donald Trump to be president, and I'm going to fight to make sure that he is not the president. Hillary Clinton has said that in her first 100 days she's going to pass immigration reform. I can't wait to work with her on that. The major differences, I would say, are that I am not as hawkish as Hillary Clinton. I believe war should be our absolute last resort and not our first resort, and I'm going to fight for that just like I did coming out against the Iraq War in 2003 with Jim McDermott, to make sure that people understood that a war just hurts not just this generation, but generations to come. I would also say that I am a big fan of single-payer health care, and I really believe that we should make sure we have single-payer health care. We've taken some big steps forward with Medicare for All and some of the platforms that came through the Democratic Party, which, by the way, thanks to the movement that helped create that progressive platform, the most progressive platform we've ever seen, I think. But that is, I think, I believe that we should be able to do that. And so those are a couple of the things that are really important to me. I want to take on the big banks. I believe that Hillary Clinton will go there, but we need to make sure that we are taking on those big banks and really reforming our tax system so that corporations pay what they should pay. They've gone from paying 6% of our GDP was corporate revenue, now it's 2%.
So for me, first and foremost, it came down to an issue of really bold statements about the environment early on. I mean, it was a strong call that we not drill in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. It was a strong statement around banning fracking. It was a strong statement around the extraction of fossil fuels on federal lands. And those are the values that I stand for boldly and strongly and will fight for. So, but here's the issue. I think we're both progressives in this race. And the question is going to be, who will effectively build the bridges to deliver for our home in the Northwest, and take the values that we have here and move those into Washington, D.C. I mean, you will see agreement. I am passionate about single-payer health care. I've been a co-sponsor of that legislation the last 3 years in the State House. But if you look at my record, the things that I have built bridges on, passed significant reforms to change our mental health system with Joel's Law. That's exactly the kind of bipartisan legislation we need to see in Congress to make it so we reinvest in our mental health system. Started the state's work on opiate addiction and chemical dependency at the legislative level. The fact that Seattle Police Department is out there carrying naloxone right now, saving the lives of kids in our communities who are overdosing, is because of the legislation that I brought a coalition together to pass in Olympia. The work that's being done today on reforming our criminal justice system, making it so that tens of thousands of people in America, by the way, we should incarcerate 10 times as few people as we do today. But the work I've done on criminal justice is opening up career pathways to tens of thousands of people with convictions in their past. These are results, and they're results that I've created by working across the aisle and delivering for our community.
Yeah!
I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll go to the closing. The last question I want to ask, and I believe we would start with the Senator? Thank you, Representative Walkinshaw. So I want to ask you this question, and let's just give it a minute, okay? You okay with that, Chris? Okay. Is there any hope for reducing gun violence in our country?
Yes, and this is why. I think it's three things. I want to thank Councilmember Joe McDermott, who I think brought this issue to the forefront in this congressional race. So thank you, Joe. Three things. One is, I believe we are on the verge of having the most progressive United States Supreme Court in U.S. history once we elect Hillary Clinton to be president. Yeah. And what that's going to do, I mean, that's going to look like the Warren Court, I hope, of the 60s and 70s. That's going to stand up for women's reproductive rights. That's going to stand there and support assault, reinterpret the Second Amendment in a way that realizes that the Founding Fathers did not believe that automatic assault weapons ought to be in the hands of ordinary Americans. So I have a lot of hope in the Supreme Court to take up cases which will overturn and reinterpret the Second Amendment. The second is that within Congress, we need to start electing Democrats who stand for responsible gun reform. So I have an A+ rating 3 years in a row, actually the only person here to have been rated a champion by the Alliance for Gun Responsibility.
So I'm really excited about a roundtable we just had this week that I pulled together. Cheryl Stumbo, many of you know, is a survivor of the Jewish Federation shooting. And she and a number of others, Zach Carstensen, also a survivor, the prosecutor's office. We had Adam Klein, who had introduced legislation around gun reform over and over again in the Senate. And we had a really fabulous, and Tony Gomez from Public Health, we had a really fabulous conversation about what specifically we can do. And we came up with some great ideas. Number one, that we need to start investing in public health research, which we're doing here in King County, but we came up with very specific ways that we could do that. And I've worked in public health for 10 years, and I'll tell you, smoking cessation, seatbelts, all started with data. So that's the number one thing. Second thing is, I think that builds our case. And then the second thing is that we really believe that there's a way that we could start to look at the ACA, start to actually make the case for how we take on these gun manufacturers within the context of the Affordable Care Act and really looking at gun violence as a piece of affordable care.
And I would just like to ask a simple question, and we'll start with the Senator. Why should we vote for you?
1 minute. Sorry. Well, I'm so excited to be in this race to run for Congress. You all know me in different contexts. Some of you know me for taking on the Bush administration and successfully suing the Bush administration, stopping thousands of deportations across the country. Some of you know me for starting One America, what is now the largest immigration advocacy group in the state, and at a time when immigration reform was not popular. Some of you know me for being a key leader on passing a $15 minimum wage here in Seattle. So you know what I can do, and some of you know me in the state legislature where I've taken on payday lending, stopped bad payday lending bills, where I've invested, as I said, in expanding access to contraceptives for women on Medicaid. I intend to go to Congress and not only stand up for the values that are so dear to us as Americans, the values that gave me the opportunity as an immigrant to this country, but also to invest in getting things done by building the movement, by expanding our democracy, by making sure that everybody is voting, excited about voting, and sees government as the response to our situation today. So I can't wait to represent you, and I hope I have your vote. Thank you.
It's an honor to be with all of you today. I'm running for Congress because I love the Northwest. I love our home. My father's family is an agricultural educator, farmer, fifth-generation Washingtonian. My mother's family immigrated to this country from Cuba in the 1960s. She's a lifelong public school teacher. And I grew up in a part of our state, rural Whatcom County. I went through schools where less than half the kids that I came into school with graduated. I've seen kids fall through the cracks in the communities that I've grown up in. And the reason that I am running for Congress is because of the innovation, the values, the ability to innovate, the progressivism, and I think the forward-lookingness of the Northwest for our country. This congressional seat, working with the community we live in, has the chance to both take the values that we have to Washington, D.C., but it also has the ability to work alongside our community to make our community one where if you can live in the work in the place you can afford to live in, to have a family here and have it grow up in a community that's environmentally sound and just. And I'm running for Congress because of my passion for our home. So I would be honored to have your vote.